Keith Andrew, along here with Ms. Wonder Woman, Shannon Farnon, and I just want to say thank you for being a guest on my talk show.
It is my pleasure, Keith. It's nice to see you face to face.
You too.
Thanks.
Now, for people who want to know, a year and a half ago, I tried reaching out to you, but at that time you were booked and you were busy. But
Yes.
A year and a half later, I'm honored and privileged to have you on my show once again.
Well, thank you. I'm glad I was available to sit and talk with you.
Now, like I said, it's a half-hour, 45-minute conversation. You can say anything you want, curse if you want to. Completely up to you what you want to talk about. So, starting off, what can you tell me about yourself?
Well, how far back do you want to go?
That's completely up to you.
I was born in Canada, raised in Chicago, and I've been a valley girl out in the San Fernando Valley since high school. I began my career basically by majoring in theater arts in high school and college, and started professionally in 1964. I planned to be as available in the business as possible, such as commercials, which I've done many, many of, films, television shows. I do print work for advertising. I do voiceover work, as you already know. The famous one being Wonder Woman for Super Friends and Challenge of the Super Friends. I also do narration and voiceovers for commercials. And I do looping work, which totally replaces the voice of another performer. So I've been a busy girl. Industrial films, anywhere there was a paycheck, they could find me available.
Now, how did you get into acting and voiceover works?
Well, the acting was kind of easy. Once I started in the theater department in high school, I knew that's what I wanted to do. But I was also raised by an entertainment family. I'll give you a brief history of that. My father was an orchestra leader his entire life. My mother was a singing comedian and briefly did films out here in California for a couple of years, 39, 40, and 41. And both of my father's brothers are major classical people. Robert Farnon is a light classical composer, conductor in London. He has passed away in the last couple of years. And Dennis Farnon, the other brother, was the orchestra conductor and arranger for the Bullwinkle cartoons. So I guess I have cartoons somewhere in my bloodline. Anyway, it was sort of a given. We as children were raised to be prepared with all of the lessons that were possible to take, and my parents were very generous in providing those lessons. I have two sisters. One is Charmian Carr, and she played Liesel in The Sound of Music. I have another sister, Darlene Carr, who did many, many shows during the years. Both of them can be Googled, and you can learn who they are. So it was a natural that I went into showbiz. So here I am. Started out singing and dancing with a girlfriend in clubs, and did some theater in LA, some local theater, and then bingo, got rolling in the commercial field, and that was very lucrative for me, so I was able to provide quite nicely.
Now, when you mention dancing in a club, you don't mean like a strip joint. You mean like an actual professional club.
No, nightclubs. Not strip clubs. No. Those weren't these days, Keith. Those were other days.
Also, it's a different generation. I don't think they had strip clubs back then.
Oh, I'm sure they did. No. Come on. Those things are as old as time immemorial. Prostitution, strip clubs, gambling, drugs, that's been going around since long before you and I hit the planet.
Now, you bring up a good subject I was going to ask you. It's not to make you feel old or anything. I'm not saying that.
I am old.
Well, I'm not really, no disrespect. But I like history and I love stories. So do you have any stories from back in the day you like to share? It's funny. I failed history class because, I didn't really care about the Civil War and World War One. But when senior citizens, and no disrespect, tell me stories of when they were my age, I love it. And I remember it because it's exciting.
Yes. We all have been listening to those stories from our parents and our grandparents, and we have our stories now to share with your generation, and even lower than that, the younger generation. There's so many things that go through the internet now about the 50s. Well, that was my heyday as a young girl, and it was a very naive time. We were fairly protected as a young group of people. The teachers in our schools still wore suits and ties, and the women wore dresses and high heels. And we had a certain sense of respect, and I'm talking public schools here. I recently had an experience. I happen to be the class coordinator for all my reunions, and we have them every 5 years. And this year we had one. And we visited the campus, which, when we were in the school, was brand new. Well, I'm walking through the campus, and I said to our tour guide, "What are all these black marks on the sidewalks?" She said, "Gum." Well, we were just blown away, we seniors who are there to tour the campus. When we were in high school, you weren't allowed to chew gum. Now you're allowed to do pretty much whatever you want to do, including carry cell phones and talk on cell phones. And it's another time. We were ducking under our school desks to avoid the atomic bomb. A lot of good that would have done to go underneath the school desk. But it was just the beginning of. Look at the wide open world we have now with the internet. There's nothing that you cannot Google and get all kinds of information. We had to use encyclopedias, which were pretty dated and probably very slanted in many ways. And now we have Wikipedia. And I'm very in love with technology. There's nothing that I don't want to know about it. There's nothing that I wouldn't jump into and try. But then I'm kind of a curious person anyway. If I don't know how to put something together, I'm going to find out, by golly. But as a youngster or a teen, we just had a different time. I mean, we had curfews and you talk about strip clubs and drugs. Well, my God, that would have been the fringes of our society. Certainly not in the groups that I was in. And I wound up being Miss San Fernando. I went to the San Fernando High School. And then when I went to college, I wound up being the homecoming queen and all the things little girls wish for. And then, of course, Wonder Woman came out of the blue and now has sort of legs of her own. I just did my first convention in Knoxville, Tennessee. I've sort of avoided those. And a lovely man approached me through my website, ShannonFarnon.com, and convinced me with email conversations that I might enjoy it. And I truly did enjoy it. I was quite surprised at the genuine warmth and friendliness of all the fans. Everyone was very respectful. So I think our generation is going to make it just fine.
Well, two questions on that. And, when you mentioned you didn't want to do it, you're not in that boat alone. There's the other one, Amy Jo Johnson, for the longest time. She was the Pink Ranger on Mighty Morphin Power Rangers.
Oh, okay.
For the longest time, she wanted absolutely nothing to do with it, didn't want to go. She went recently, and she said, "I should have been doing this from the start."
Well, again, maybe we're a little on the old school side. I used to do a lot of celebrity autographing for the Special Olympics when they came to UCLA every year. And that was very fulfilling. I haven't done that in quite a few years. As I say, I kind of drifted away from that type of thing. But I did enjoy it very much, and we'll be doing another one the end of January out here called the Hollywood Show.
Speaking of the holiday, I almost said holiday show. Speaking of the show, are you going to the Hall of Fame or the movie awards tonight?
No, I am not. No, I don't do much networking in my business. I'm sure that you should. I know that I teach that you should, but it's just never been my cup of tea. I'm actually going down to the Walt Disney Concert Hall to hear the Los Angeles Philharmonic.
Sounds like fun.
Yes, it is. We go to a lot of theater, we go to a lot of music, a lot of films, a lot of good restaurants.
As long as you enjoy, that's all that matters.
That's right. And I also play a lot of tennis and enjoy that. I could probably play 5 days a week if I had the time.
Now, you're retired, right?
Well, I'm semi-retired. I still go off on auditions. I was just on a print audition the other day for a pharmaceutical. When you get to this age, you get to go on a lot of pharmaceutical auditions. I think they think that once you have white hair, you probably need medicine.
Right.
Fortunately, I don't.
Now, the reason I brought up that is because, people always say, oh, when I'm retired, I get to do this. My dad had to retire, and he said it was the worst thing he ever did because it was horrible. He wasn't ready for it. What about you? When you retired, were you ready for it?
I never had a point of retirement because I've always been here and available to work. When I'm not out of town, I'm available to work. The business itself sort of moves you out of the business as far as an active actor. I mean, you reach a certain age and there's just less and less work, and a lot of people who would like to have that work. So it's not a motion you say, well, now as of this date I'm retired, look, where's my gold watch? You just start doing less and less work, and it just sort of has a life of its own, and not unexpected. When you go into a business like this where you're in the public eye, you know that's going to happen. The statistics for people over the age of even 40 are, well, let's just say it doesn't show you the population. People are, you go to a film, you don't see a whole lot of actors within the film that are over certainly 50, and if you do, they're mostly men.
It's funny we should be talking about this because a couple of days ago I talked to another person about this, and I think it was in the paper too, how they're pushing out the old and bringing in the new, and it's kind of like, it doesn't matter if you have seniority, you hire these schmucks right off the, it's uncensored too.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
You hire these schmucks who don't know anything, but willing to work for cheap, and it's like, what the hell, I'm willing, if you were my teacher, I say it doesn't matter how old you are, I'm willing to learn because you have the experience. You know what the hell you're doing. This guy just came out of college and smoking dope or whatever the hell he was doing. Doesn't know his head from his ass.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, you wonder why. And if you look at it, where the education has gone down. They don't use textbooks anymore. They use their iPads.
Yep.
I'll give you a perfect example. My brother's friend was the first kid ever in high school to walk around with a briefcase and a laptop. Mm-hmm. And now that was back in 99, 2000. And then people said that's ridiculous. Where's your bag? Where's your books? And you know what? 10 years later, 12 years later, everyone now has an iPad or a book because they don't use textbooks anymore.
Yeah. Well, the textbooks would get so out of date anyway and have to be replaced so often that in a way we're saving a lot of trees. And so I welcome the technology. But in the other subject that you were talking about, the person coming in with probably not the talent or the experience, that's going to always be the case. And those are the people that will probably have 15 minutes of fame. The ones that have longevity, if they don't have the chops when they start in the business, they usually make it a point to at least start learning. So I kind of look at all those things as just the way it is. There's probably not a business in existence that doesn't do the same thing. They move the seniors out and bring in the young people. First of all, they can get the young people for a lot less money than they're probably paying the seniors. So it's understandable. It's not nice. It's not fun. It's probably not the way we should be doing things. Certainly in some countries they have great respect for their elders and treat them with honor and really do glean from them what they've got to teach them. But that's not necessarily the United States.
No, that's true. I was also talking to this person from Canada, and it's completely the opposite, And the next thing I was going to ask you is, where do you stand on gun control? And if you're okay with it, do you still do the Wonder Woman voice, or is that hard?
I do the Wonder Woman voice on my website. I do a lot of telephone answering machine, little gigs in the Wonder Woman character. I will do any tape or whatever, any script that someone has, whether they're doing it for a roast or, a party or a happy birthday. There's the Wonder Woman voice is going to be around, I guess, as long as I am, because obviously my voice is important to me. I'm not going to let it go to pot, as they say. But on gun control, since that's a sort of separate question, I believe in nonviolence. So even in hunting, I'm not a big advocate of killing animals unless you're starving to death. There's a lot of sides to that issue. I don't think people should carry guns. I don't think people should use guns. I don't think our world is any better because of guns. It may not be any worse either, because there's a lot of violent, angry people in the world that have used things besides guns. And Lord knows, as far back as you can read, we've had violence and people killing people, man's inhumanity to man. It just seems to me that a gun makes it a little bit easy.
That's true. Do you think it kind of makes you like a coward? Because you're not killing a person with your bare hands, you're using it as some small toy?
Not necessarily. But most people that I would know that are not, we'll call, violent people, would perhaps have guns to protect themselves from violence, perhaps robbery. I don't know. I can't think of a good reason. I always feel that if you have a gun, you too are vulnerable. I don't know if cowardice has much to do with guns any more than it would have to do with knives or fists. If you find that you cannot communicate your way out of a situation, we're just always going to have to deal with the mental cases, the terrorists, people that are just out for the fast buck and therefore have to use guns and knives in order to rob. I wish there was an easy answer with this subject, but there really isn't.
No, I understand, and I do support the Second Amendment, and I do support the rights to defend yourself in life or death situations, and I do say sometimes you do have the right to kill in and only, I want people to say this for the record, in and only self-defense. If you're back up into a corner, if your face is a bear or someone has a knife to you, you have the right, someone breaks into your house, you have the right, kill the fucker. Excuse me, but it's uncensored. But you have the right to defend yourself, regardless. Now, with that being said, I do not support, AK-40. When our founding fathers say, right to bear arms, they meant like a handgun.
Did you ever? Actually, Keith, they meant a very crude rifle.
Right.
And it was not easy to reload nor to shoot.
But now you have do you honestly imagine Abraham Lincoln or John F. Kennedy walking around with an AK-47? And
No, but I can't even imagine them walking around with a gun.
That's
of
true.
any size.
I don't know, people have been in the NRA, they just care about money. And basically what it comes down to is you turn a blind eye, and I always said to people, you need a background check. If you're mentally disturbed, if you're handicapped, use me for an example, if you're handicapped, if you're not all there, or a former criminal or terrorist, you should be banned, period. I don't give a shit if it's your second right. That goes away. If you're a danger for someone, a danger to yourself, that right goes away. You know, I don't even want a gun. Just give me a paintball gun. That's fine.
That's perfect.
But, you know, the point, like I was saying, it comes down to money. How much money are you got to give me to turn an eye? Like, you hear the stories about the Trayvon case, with the cops killing this black guy for no reason over the cigarettes. You hear about all these other BS crimes that could easily been avoided if they took other steps. And now in New York City, they're handcuffing the police, and they can't do certain things, and crime is now up. And it's like, well, what is this shit? It's kind of like you can't... Okay, you need law and order, but yet at the same time, you need to respect the badge. And at the same time, you can't abuse the badge. And, I don't know, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, that subject is a very interesting one, actually, because it does take a certain type of personality to want to be a policeman. It's not your average Joe that wants to be a cop. It requires a certain sense of, I can really do the job, I'm tough, I'm this, I'm that, I'm the other thing. And then, of course, the highly trained, caring person can make a mistake as a policeman, protecting themselves. There's the good and the bad in every group, including the police. And it's a difficult thing to police the police. You will always have the people in charge of the law enforcement sticking up for the people in the law enforcement. So it's a difficult thing. And I mean, I can't think of a good incident to use a gun. I mean, unless your life is threatened on the spot, or your loved one is threatened on the spot, violently threatened, I can't think of a reason that using a gun is going to make us a better place in the world.
That's true. And there's two questions. Back in, you mentioned the 50s, think of any incidents that happen now that you would never thought in a million years would have happened back in the day. Like, for example, 9/11, never thought that would have happened. What was the other one? The Columbine shootings, that's another thing.
I worry more about terrorism than I do, and I don't mean other countries coming to get us. I mean the terrorist incident over which we have no control. A terrorist is rarely a rational thinking human being. And the law enforcement community would only get lucky to be able to stop a terrorist before they committed their atrocity. We're talking some really unbalanced brains that cause terrorism. So I think that's a much bigger threat than an occasional mistake by a policeman or occasional shooting with a gun. There's nothing we can do about terrorism unless it's just educate the world about. And where do you start? There's so many fanatical religions. There's fanatical political thinking. There's good Lord, Keith. There are men in the world, all over the world, that are still trying to keep women back in their home.
No, I agree.
A woman's place is in the home.
And it's sad people still think that way.
Yeah, many, many, many. And some of them can be your friends, and all of a sudden they'll say a little something that makes you think, oh boy, this is a real old school cat here. So, what would Wonder Woman say in this situation? Great era.
You know, a lot of people joke, and I also always wonder this, you know, Marvel and DC did a anniversary of 9/11. You had Batman, Superman helping out, and Wonder Woman was there at the very end. I should find his picture and send it to you, but I don't know where to find it. It's Superman standing in the rubble, and he holds up the American flag after the towers came down. And I think Marvel did something after that. I don't know what they did, but I remember the Superman one standing out the most.
Wow, I wish I had seen that. I have not seen it.
Well, if I find it, I'll let you know.
Great.
Now, the question is, people make fun of it. It's not really funny, but it's kind of, it makes you think, where were the superheroes on 9/11? Now, what if there was a Wonder Woman, for example?
Yes.
Would it have made a difference? If there was the Fantastic Four, would it have made a difference?
Of course, if the fantasy could become reality, there's no question it would make a difference. Just the very presence. I don't know. Have you had a chance to watch the new series called Gotham?
Heard of it, couldn't really get into it.
It's really like what the city was no doubt definitely like back in that day. Total unruly people, police, politicians. I mean, that's real. That's real story time. What's the movie way back with Daniel Day-Lewis? The Streets of New York?
Gangs in New York?
What was it?
Gangs in New York.
Yes. I mean, you have to know, that's history. I mean, the story and the people might not be history, but the condition of society and the lack of civilization, that's history.
What about, we're talking about history now, what about Cinderella Man with Braddock? He was a real person. He built the, what was it? Not the Brooklyn Bridge. He helped build the horizontal bridge in Manhattan.
I'm sorry, I missed the name.
Braddock or Brackus. He was the fighter, and he was a big influence. Cinderella Man.
No, I don't. I'm sorry, I'm not knowledgeable about that.
That's a great movie. You should watch it. But like we're saying, there's periods of time where, 9/11 you never thought would have happened, and then Hurricane Sandy, you never thought that would happen to New York, and supposedly Long Island's supposed to fall into the ocean. They've been saying that about California, but California's still there.
There's a whole lot of people who preach the doom and gloom. The only thing we can do is live today and do the best we can and try to do something good for someone else. And take care of our animals and our planet and our air and our water. We have a big job to do here.
No, I agree with you.
I mean, if we could just focus on the things that have to be done, even getting involved in community work, which I do, at least you feel like you're doing a little something for your planet, for making it a better place to live. Because as you mentioned earlier, the money. There's always going to be the person or the group that is only interested in their self-interest. And if it's not good for the community, well, so what? It's good for them as an individual or a group. And that's unfortunate. But it's just not a sacred planet, Keith. We just can't seem to make all that happen. So we got to do today.
Well, it's the saying, you may dress a monkey up in a suit, you may make him walk, but at the end of the day, a monkey's still a monkey.
Oh, very good. Very good.
Well, wrapping up, do you have any funny stories you like to share, or any pranks that you did over the years?
Funny stories. Well, life is pretty funny. I try to laugh at it a lot. I'm sure you're talking about funny stories in the business. but off the top of my head, I have to tell you, I've worked with such talented people. The Super Friends group, which of course grew with the extra people like Aquaman and the Green Hornet and all that. We grew into quite a cast. Such great people, such wonderful talent, and particularly working with one man, Michael Bell, who played Zan and has done a tremendous amount of cartoon work. He was just a funny man. We could be rolling on the floor just listening to him. But as far as little anecdotes or little goof-ups and things like that, nothing comes to mind. I've just always enjoyed my work, and I appreciate that you wanted to talk to me about it. And I'll just keep on keeping on.
Yeah, and I look forward to building a friendship with you.
Oh, thank you, Keith, and I hope that you continue to do the good work that you're doing.
You too.